Hello, my friends. Nice to be back on our regular spiritual cafe. And I'm very pleased to see all of you. And we're going to have a wonderful 20 minutes about a quote that Sandy is now going to read for us.
Okay. The highest form of intelligence, according to neuroscientist Anil Seth and psychologist Robert Sternberg, isn't logic, speed, or memory. It's metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. Your brain literally observes itself, corrects errors, and rewires in real time. Every time you say, wait, why did I react like that? Your neural pathways start shifting. That moment of self observation is your brain evolving. That's pretty deep, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is interesting because it's like a scientific approach of spirituality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts, Helene?
Um, well, when you are the observer of your thoughts, it makes it easier to um, make a difference between uh, what is yours and what is not yours. Like when
Mm.
something happens and you react in a certain way or you think in a certain way, that can be something that has been programmed, um, coming from your education, from the culture or whatever. And then when you start reflecting on that, it gives you a level of freedom that you don't have if you just react. So, and then your brain opens new doors and you get to understand, oh, is this really mine or is this part of my background? And then it gives you an opportunity to, do I really want to think or act this way? And that opens new doors. So I love that concept and I try to use that, not always with success, but I do try to use
Yeah.
it.
I had some thoughts last night when I, read the quote and my mind was really happy. It says, okay, we're going to think about all this stuff. And then my observer says, you're getting too much in that brain and that's not good. And I have this love candle here. So to remind me that I want to actually change, my observer is always really active, but I want to go ahead and when I get that moment of, oh, I could say this another way, or maybe I shouldn't even say something, I want to change that to go through my heart more because then the response gets softer, or I can maybe listen more to somebody else. And I really want to change that. And I'm really excited that we're focusing on that part that is a bit, I think, more awake and that can observe and that gives us a moment, oh, I can change that. I can change a feeling. I can change how I respond. And then in other ways, when we don't interact with something, when I'm looking at myself, my thinking, my thoughts about things that I might not have completed, and my thinking starts happening and it can go into the negative, even though my observer is there, it's seeing that piece. And then I have turned a bit that corner where I can say, "Oh, okay, I don't have to be so hard on myself. I can let that come more natural. I can, even though if I can see it, I can give it a pause. I can maybe let somebody else take over part of the things that I want to work through, and that all of a sudden gave me more relief. And
Yeah.
but I really do see how we have to really, really be active in that part of observing our thinking.
Mm-hmm. I like
Mm.
how you described that, and especially the piece of incorporating your heart. Um, it's interesting because most of my life, people would say to me, "Oh, you don't really believe that. That's not what you really
Mm.
think. You're no, that's not the way to think." And so for many, many decades, I didn't even know what I thought, let alone
Mm.
how I was reacting to something. So through all of that process, I became the chameleon. So I
Mm.
just became whoever the person I was talking to wanted me to be. And I didn't really even know my own thoughts. And then later in life, probably in the last decade or decade and a half, I finally started learning who I was and started seeing what I thought for a change. And it has become an experience where I'm extremely self-introspective, and that's really opened up a lot for me in terms of self-discovery. um, but it's wonderful to have the reminder of the heart-centered part of that. And I think how my heart enters in is my reaction to something first hits me in my heart or my gut, and that will kind of flip my attention and say, whoa, what's that I need to pay attention to? Like if somebody says something to me, I have a reaction, then I go in and I say, well, why did I have that reaction to what they're saying? What did that remind me of? Or why did that make me feel bad? Or why did it make me feel insecure? And and the scientific part of me, which isn't huge, but the scientific part of me always looks for the root cause of something. So I look back to where did that hit me before in either an earlier time in my life or some experience that I've had. And a big thing for me is now getting to know myself. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? Why do I think the way I think? Why do I behave the way I behave? I can't corroborate what they said in the quote about the outcome of that being, I don't remember the exact words right now, but it was like really amazing to have that outcome. And I think, well, I'm just learning. I'm just learning. And so I use every opportunity as an opportunity to learn. And I do look inside of myself to see why. And that's been interesting since I lived the first number of years of my life in denial of who I was. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I think it's hopeful to know that we have that capacity. We do not have to be a victim of our thoughts or our reactions. We have the capacity to look from a higher perspective, from a higher mind as an observer. Like you say, the higher mind can also, well, is working through the heart. So we have different levels of minds that are active, and the one coming from the heart is of course the one that we want to be in charge uh, all of the time, but sometimes it's not there, but we do our best.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes easier than others.
yes,
For sure.
sometimes you just feel, but the joy that brings us in that heart and in that higher mind is the key to a freedom that I think is very important that we realize we have. Otherwise, you may react in a certain way because you think that's, well, that's how I learned it. This is how I need to do it. And then the heart says, yes, but this doesn't feel right. I don't want to do that for the person. So the observer gets the chance to look at it and be redirecting, redirecting on is this what you really want to do? And I just want to share another quote that we use at home. Um, when somebody feels that some reactions are not so nice, we say, was this really needed? Was this kind? Is this true? And I mean, those were the three gateways that Pythagoras was always giving. And I mean, this is the observer, because by doing that, you reflect, is this really needed to say that? Is this kind? Is this really useful for that person or for myself? And those are all little tools that can help, I
I
think.
really like that, Helene. I really like the practice of even remembering to ask those questions. I think is phenomenal. But I wanted to add one more thing is that I've found for myself, the more I look at who I am and why I think the way I think and what it is that I think, the more I can accept what somebody else is saying or allowing them to be different from their perspective, realizing that there's a whole cadre of activities that shape who I am, as it is for everyone. So it helps me to be a little more accepting and in allowance of people's differences. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
like
true.
that too. Yeah. And what Sandy said, and you, Helena, too, it all kind of comes together. But for myself growing up, I was also a people pleaser. So it was just came natural for me. And so I was always interested, oh, what does that person think? You know, that came automatic and more. And then over the years, as I got older, that voice or that thought started to go away a little. And, you know, when I first learned about the observer, too, that was really helpful for me to put a name to that part that watches. And I started to pay more attention to what the other person was saying instead of trying to figure out, oh, what are they thinking? Because how can we do that, right? And unless they verbalize it. And then I used more some of the words that Helena said. I asked more, my notes, uh, what are your thoughts about that? Or what do you mean by that? And it took on a softer note instead of being kind of a struggle with each other, you know, oh, this is what you're saying, or this is what you're thinking, and then the other person said, no, that's not it, but you're not in that nice mode about listening to each other and just hearing what the other person says, and that observer is listening to, and that doesn't need that instant response, then the whole situation, the whole conversation changes. And I love growing up. I read a lot, and not only books about wisdom, just all sorts of what the philosopher said, fiction, whatever. And so my brain's very active, and it always wants to figure out stuff. And then, of course, when we change, then and our observer is more active, or we want to change, then it always digs for the ones, oh, we want to change this. And then you lose the observer again because the mind goes so into, oh, this is what this was about, and this is what we could change, and then, oh, maybe this is better. And it just starts going away and away from what it really is that's going on. So that part, you know, is easier and easier to let go because that's such a burden to be stuck in that box of, you know, running around trying to find, oh no, here, oh no, there, oh no, no, this is what it's all about. Oh God, you know, it's like, I'm so relieved that, I can find my way a bit easier now. Oh, that I don't have to run around like everywhere.
Along with what you're saying, Hilda, is the Stephen Covey comment of seek first to understand and then to be understood. I
Mm,
think that fits kind of what you're talking about there when you're feeling a conflict with another person, asking that question to understand their perspective. And I think the more we learn about ourselves, the more we learn about the capacities of other people
Mhm.
and hold space for the fact that they're different, their life experiences are different than ours. And I think that sort of
Mhm.
starts with understanding our own experiences and understanding how we think and why we think the way we do. Then we can be more accepting of others and take that leap of seek first to understand before we push our need to be understood onto somebody else.
That's for sure.
well, I think this is a very nice thought for Valentine, that we seek to understand before we want to be understood. So I think it's a
Mhm.
nice closure for this conversation. Thank you very much for sharing your wonderful experiences and ideas. And I'm looking forward for our next spiritual cafe. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.